So we're now ready for principle number 4, the direction of sexual energy. So sexual energy can be directed upwards in your life towards higher goals in a productive manner, towards a more meaningful and sustainable life. And it can be directed downwards in a destructive and self-sabotaging manner. At a practical level, then, directing energy upwards is when you're using your time and your energy to create something good in the world. It might be hard work, it might be very challenging, it might even be downright terrible, but you do it because of the goal that you're aiming for. So this is really broadly applicable. It might be because you're about to call up a girl that you met on the bus yesterday, and you want to have a conversation with her, and you're really terrified of doing it. Could be that you're bringing up a difficult issue with your wife that's really in the way of building more intimacy or destroying the intimacy between you, and you're really scared about how to do that and not knowing how to do it. Or it could be that you're just an accountant in a firm and you need to meet a deadline for some big auditing project before a deadline or something like that. And in the first case, of course, the goal that you're aiming towards is to get closer to be united with, or even create a family with the girl that you saw on the bus. In the last case, your goal might be because you want to contribute to a culture of integrity and honesty in your firm, or create more value for customers, or something like that. So it doesn't really matter what the goal is, but the important thing is that it's a meaningful goal where you are embarking on a path towards mastery in your life, in contributing value to the world, and that you're using something that's really meaningful and deeply connected to who you are at the deepest sense of your personal identity, and you're kind of like the reason why you're here on this planet in life. So sexual energy, which is directed downwards, will normally have the function of supporting you to be distracted from discomfort in your life, or from difficulties. It will normally be for instant gratification of pleasure. So this is pornography, hookups, all that kind of stuff as well. It takes us away from thinking about the actual problems that we need to deal with in our life. And what normally happens is, as we direct sexual energy downwards, then it becomes twisted in a perverted kind of way, and it can lead to really destructive aspects in our life. And we try and kind of like hold this thing separate from the rest of our life and put a wall around them, but there's a tendency that they leak out and come and influence other things in our relationships. In the beginning, often in kind of invisible or unseen ways, but it becomes more and more visible with time, of course. It can create, it just becomes like a downward spiral, which is really, really difficult to get out of. When we want to direct energy upwards, obviously, then it does the opposite thing, and it helps us to focus our attention on what it is that's actually holding us back in our life, and we need to deal with all kinds of other things that are difficult for us. And so it really means deliberately doing hard things that challenge you, that make you sometimes uncomfortable, but that there's a greater purpose, and it's the most important thing normally that you need to deal with in your life that you're dealing with. So there's a difficulty towards directing your energy upwards. And at the same time, it's important to mention here that the dragons are always much bigger in your mind. And they always seem to be far bigger when you start out on your journey. As an example, if you're down inside a hole and I see you, then I can see, well, hey, you just need to get up out of that hole and then look around. There's so much around that's beautiful and amazing. And there's so many opportunities, where there's fruits and whatever in this field or whatever we are, right? But if you're down in that hole and you're just looking around you, then you're just going to see walls and darkness. And, I can stick out in my hand and say hey, grab my hand and pull you up. But if you're not looking upwards, and you're refusing to look upwards and look for light, then you're not going to be able to find the motivation to do that, because you're not going to believe me. And so it really takes a certain decision on your part to really orientate your gaze upwards if you want to start doing that thing. That's how this all starts. And I think that's why you'll hear me mentioning the word God sometimes in these conversations, and I think that's an essential element. If you go to a 12-step program for addiction, then one of the first steps that people need to do is step number 1 is to be able to orientate towards a higher power, to admit that we are helpless to help ourselves, and that we need to find a higher power of some kind. So this is all really basic stuff and quite simple about upwards and downwards being productive and being destructive. But it's really important that we connect these things in a very detailed and specific way to our sexuality, to understand how we're using that in our life, and be able to then become the master of our sexuality again, instead of being the slave of it as well. Because unless we do that, then this thing is going to continue to eat away at our life as well. So yeah, next conversation, next video is going to be about our specific relationships with women.